discovered marijuana when I was 15 years old, I didn't think it was any big deal. I certainly thought it was less harmful than alcohol or tobacco, even as a kid. So I never understood what the problem was. But when I came to High Times magazine, I wasn't a big pothead. I was like a weekend party guy. You hand me a joint, I'll take a hit on it, but I never had it, never paid for it, and really, I mean, I did in certain times of my life, but that wasn't where I was at. That wasn't why I came to High Times. I came to High Times because it's the only voice of the counterculture left. I feel like I'm a member of a community that came about in the 60s, and that community's been persecuted since basically its whole existence. And the drug laws is how the government persecutes minorities, and the counterculture is a minority group. And we have to recognize that, yeah, we are a minority group. And yeah, it's like all these laws that are designed to railroad us into jail, that's really, restricting us from having our culture, basically, because, this is our sacrament, and, we don't want to take sacraments away from anybody else, and we want freedom of religion in this country. So if we're going to have freedom of religion, we got to allow new spiritual cultures to emerge, nurture them, let them come to fruition. So this culture is only at its very beginnings. What I discovered at High Times first was it's not bad for you. People live longer if they use marijuana wisely. So,
596 and other initiatives I tried to get on the ballot. But, by the way, you must remember that our organization, the hemp organization, and up until this year, in 28 years, have never asked the public for 1 penny. We funded it out of the money we made from the businesses we did. And Captain Ed and I and Mike Kleiman have funded this thing totally out of our pockets, personally, and never have asked you for help. 28 years, and I think if you know, we've done a good job of educating the country on hemp, something that nobody else would have ever done. In fact, when we educated most of the rest of the country, and I think we went through a big degree of having to convince normal, even High Times at one time, that we were right about the hemp information. We went through a lot of trouble convincing them. And they were sure we were wrong, and we were going to make a mess of the whole movement if we kept up with it. Anybody remember that?
By my future wife, how to describe me, and her roommate said Tom is a very enterprising young man.
Well, that's certainly...
Sure, I was a janitor in those days, so I was very enterprising. It's far more enterprising today. That's the whole idea. Well, it's been a wild ride the last almost 25 years of stand-up comedy, and we've seen the rise and the fall of performers from people like Roseanne and Sinbad, who started with us as amateurs 20 years ago, to the fabulous people that are coming up today. There's a young fellow that we met in Memphis 4 years ago. He's about to turn, next week he'll turn 19 years old, and he's now in New York City, where he's on a full-ride scholarship to NYU Film School, and he's going to make a very heavy impact into the comedy industry. The Montreal Comedy Festival people, as recently as last week, looked at him and thought, boy, here is a budding star of the future, not a theater. We're a nightclub. We're the breeding ground for the comedy stars of the future. Our job is to find and identify the funniest people in America long before they become household names, and to see that they get the stage time and the opportunity to be able to develop their talents, their careers, and their material. When Roseanne first went on the road in 1983, she didn't do very well. As a matter of fact, she wrote in her autobiography about being booed off stage in Bloomington, Indiana at a show of mine. And the reality was, she learned so much coming out on the road for the first time. She was in a spot where the material she developed in Denver and in Colorado Springs and in Salt Lake City, which had so much of a regional flair to it, once taken on the road out of that region, no longer had the punch. And she had to learn how to be able to talk to the nation, to the broad audience rather than the narrow audience that comes from one community. And our job is to help these people broaden out their careers, get enough experience in enough places to be able to go ahead and become a star.
Briefly, Cliff, you could tell us about efficacy and
Well, Efficacy is a grassroots organization that looks at peaceful ways of responding to social problems. The primary goal of Efficacy right now is to try and get rid of the crime and violence as is associated with the drug war, but more specifically to bring the drug war to an end. I also might mention too that I was just elected to the board of NOMO, and I'm very proud of that. But the anecdote that I would like to convey is this, and it's very simple, it's nothing hard about it. We arrest people for drug charges. We send those people to jail or to prison. While they are in prison, they get as many drugs, if not more, than they did while they were outside of the prison. My question is this: why are we doing that? Because we're doing that because, and let's just say, for argument's sake, the person serves his time in prison and he's cured of drugs. This person goes right back, more than likely, to the same environment from which he came.
Was right away was that the fascination with the urine of job applications and the possible drug taking, recreational drug taking with job applicants was not matched by the slightest concern for any other aspect of the job applicant's life or the worker's life. In fact, they will be, you can easily get hired at $6 or $7 an hour, even though they're on wages like that. You will be unable to observe the most elementary proprieties like living indoors and showering before you get to work. But they don't care. That the only one aspect of your life outside of the workplace matters, and that is the use of illegal drugs. Now, the oddest thing of all about the whole drug testing thing, and I think many of us subscribe to the idea that we live in the most rational kind of economic system there is. Capitalism has a reputation for being very rational and so on. Is that drug testing does not work. 80% of large firms do it. It doesn't work in their own terms. And I'm called Drug Testing a Bad Investment. I think everybody aware of this pamphlet? It's excellent, yeah. Dale has it. It summarizes dozens of academic studies over the years to show that drug testing does not produce the effects that are claimed for it. It's heavily advertised to employers on the basis it will lower absenteeism, improve safety, not do those things. Does not do what it is supposed to do.
It was like 25 years ago, we were right on the verge of reaching some common sense on this whole issue, and
well, I think you're right. I mean, in some ways, it would be easy to get discouraged because it has been a long struggle, and we came very close in the late 70s to winning this fight. We didn't in the end. The other side came back. The war on drugs came full bore, and for about 20 years, they've been kicking our ass. I mean, we haven't won very many battles until about 96, when the tide started coming back our direction. So I wouldn't blame anyone if they're discouraged or jaded or if they begin to doubt whether we can ever change things. But in fact, I will tell you that I am absolutely convinced that the momentum is now switched back in our direction again. The most obvious proof of that was in Oregon in November of 1998 when 67% of the voters in Oregon said, no, we do not want to arrest marijuana smokers. That wasn't just for medical use, that was for recreational use. And I don't think Oregon's the only state that would vote that way if the voters had a chance to vote on that issue. Our problem is that elected officials continue to act as if we're in the mid-50s and it's reefer madness. Now, part of that is because they came of age during a time when all they heard was zero tolerance and mandatory penalties and longer prison sentences, and marijuana arrests kept skyrocketing. So for a lot of politicians, they still believe that if they show any support for decriminalizing marijuana or legalizing marijuana, they're going to be called soft on drugs and defeated at the next election.
exactly.
That is not the case, but